We got the Fitz's recruiting update here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. As always, it's helpful to get all the information from Fitz and from Ryan Snyder as we get through prospect camp and official visits are happening, and we're going to have RPMs and breaking news and committed things like that. You can get all that information first and foremost at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, the mothership, the hub, the home of all Penn State football recruiting news that you need to know about. You can sign up right now for just $1. That's for the first week to try us out. And this is a pretty big week to do that because there's going to be some big recruiting this weekend, which we're actually going to get to first. And then we're going to talk about what happened this past weekend, because what happens next is always the most important thing with news in general. And it's a big one this weekend for Penn State football, because the official visit this weekend is stacked with some of the most important, some of the most impactful players that Penn State is recruiting in 2026. So Fitz, what's going on this weekend? Tell us a little bit more about those players coming up on Friday and Saturday.
We're actually going to take a step back because there were 4 guys that were on campus over the weekend. So 4 uncommitted guys in addition to the 16. So that it's a big weekend, even though it's not the sexy, juicy, whatever. I shouldn't put those words back to back, but not the weekend that you're looking for all kinds of things to happen because they're committed guys. But a very important weekend in the process for those committed prospects. And then you add 4 guys on top of that. Looking at the list, you kind of break them down. Marlon Bright and Marky Walbridge, the 2 offensive linemen. Marlon Bright, we thought might be a guy that pulled the trigger this weekend in terms of making that commitment. He's had a date set for July 5th for a long time. Seems to be sticking to that, but I don't think we've changed our thoughts on that. I put a pick in for him recently. Ryan's had a pick in. Steve Wilfong at On 3 has had a pick in as well. So it's been one of those things where we expect him to end up at Penn State. I really haven't changed my thoughts on that. Marky Walbridge is an interesting guy. He's probably one of the quieter prospects in the class of 2026 that Penn State's after, but he's also pretty high on the board for Penn State, and they would love to get him across the line. Of course, they've got Kevin Brown and Roseby Lubintis so far in the offensive line class. Just mentioned Marlon Bright. There's some more things coming down the pike as well, but Marky Walbridge, an important target for Penn State. Michigan is right in there. Alabama is in there, but this is a guy that Penn State would like to continue to push forward for. I think they did some good work this weekend, but as one of those quieter guys, is he all that upfront with other prospects, coaches, anybody, media, or anything like that? Not really. So taking what we've learned about him, I think there's positives there, but also, treading lightly because he's a quiet guy. Penn State brought in a couple linebackers in Kosi Okpala and Rodney Colton. Southern guys, tough sells in the beginning to begin with. Excuse me. Okpala is an interesting one because I think he's really, really interested in Penn State in terms of what it could be, but also he's from Texas and Texas wants him. As a tough sell for Penn State. Not just a tough sell, but it's going to be tough for anybody to get him out of Texas. So that's wrapping that up and moving on to this weekend. And T. Frank, you asked me in the rundown, is this the, all caps, weekend of the summer? For Deion Barnes, it is. I mean, you look at what Penn State has coming in, and there's a bunch of guys listed on our site at Blue Whale Illustrated of guys that are going to come in, and right away what jumps to the front is that defensive line group. Penn State has a couple defensive linemen in this class. Daniel Jennings has reclassified from 2026. So you've got a couple defensive tackles, but with the region being as it is, and that's what we've preached all cycle, you got to close on some of these guys, and this is going to be the opportunity. You got Luke Wafel coming in, Carter Meadows coming in. Those guys are in 5-star territory on 3, top of the board type guys. I mean, just excellent prospects in every regard, different prospects, which we've sort of parsed on here before. But you've got an opportunity for a couple of your top targets at defensive end to come in, but you've also got Jackson Ford coming in, who we talked to last week at the Under Armour camp. You got Tyson Harley, Carter Meadows' teammate at Gonzaga. He's a really good prospect as well. Keyshawn Eliezer from North Carolina. I mean, just like that's just the edge room. And there's a lot of defensive tackles visiting this weekend. Damari Simeon, top of the board. Titan Davis, top of the board. Keyshawn Stansel, top of the board.
Yeah.
Whew, man, I'm running out of air for this weekend, and I think Deion Barnes is going to feel the same way on Sunday. So it's a very important weekend on that defensive line. I mean, that all the chips are in this weekend. It's going to be very interesting to see if there is some sort of domino effect. I'm not sure that that's the case because of the way that this schedule is set to unfold, because you've got other official visits coming, and these guys are top of the board targets for, Luke Wafel was at Ohio State last week, and Carter Meadows is top of the board for Michigan, Ohio State, South Carolina. There are so many options for these guys because they are so good, and now it's time to close. That is a situation that, I don't know how it's going to play out. Somebody asked me on the board last week, why no RPM for Jackson Ford? It's like, I'm not sure how all this stuff is going to play out. You want
Yeah.
what are we going to say? 3 defensive ends. You want to take 2 more defensive tackles, something along those lines, because those guys are available. They are in your region. And as I said before, it's time to close. So we will see how Penn State reacts to this weekend. I think it's going to be positive. I don't know if it's going to be an immediate impact or immediate returns type positive. But it's going to be fascinating to see how all this plays out.
One of the reasons I asked that is just generally the importance of the trenches and the players that are visiting and the opportunity, I guess, that's ahead of Penn State with so many of these high quality, borderline or indirect 5-star players, even though I don't know there are all 32 5-stars are out yet for on 3. I guess just kind of a broader question. How do you place more importance on defensive line prospects like these and the defensive line in general? The edge rusher where Penn State's been very good. There's an opportunity to take another step with that, with a guy, especially I think like Luke Wafel, who has just a different body type and has the size where Penn State's been recruiting these guys that are maybe a little bit smaller, but those elite speed rushers having the ability to show more on film if we can develop a guy like Nittany Sutton or Luke Wafel. The question's getting away from me. I guess I'm just trying to put in the context of how important are defensive line commits and prospects to you when assessing the success or failure of a class?
I think it's pretty important because you look at what the bulk of your class is going to be. It's going to be offensive and defensive line, just because that's where you got to stack bodies in terms of getting guys in that can potentially turn into something. And Penn State's done that a lot. Like you look at, we said last year was a sort of a weaker edge class in the region, and they ended up signing 4 of them, 4,
Yeah.
4 or 5, because you include Deshaun Burnett in that. Those original linebacker Cortez Harris was in there. Chaz Coleman, you got and Ivan Kemaju, who we thought was going to be an interior guy, is now defensive end. So, like this is 2 separate conversations because I feel great about the young talent on Penn State's defensive line.
Yeah.
Now it's about stacking those guys up because this is your opportunity. 2026 is a class. Penn State is coming off of back-to-back first-round draft picks for defensive ends. I know Abdul Carter's listed as a linebacker. So back-to-back edge rushers in the first round. Had Adisa a couple of years ago. Nittany Sutton is there right now with the opportunity to maybe move into the first round. So this is an iron is hot situation, and this is sort of I said it before, and somebody commented in the chat here, a confluence of Penn State's got a ton of success. Deion Barnes has a bunch of juice right now, and the region is stocked with top level potential pass rushers and defensive tackles when you include Simeon and maybe Stancil. Stancil's really not in the region, but he's been a guy that's been up a couple times. So this is your opportunity to capitalize on everything that is going your way. Haven't looked too deeply into 2027, but 2026 seems like a high watermark in terms of that. You got to capitalize.
Yeah. It's funny. Penn State's been trying, I think, to make North Carolina, like, Virginia, then bleed into North Carolina to be part of the region. It's been a little bit more difficult there with some of the recent interest, but not pushing guys across the line.